Ok, vamos a empezar. Hola a todos y gracias por estar en este webinar. Mi nombre es Rodrigo de los Santos y soy del Centro de Education USA Mérida. El día de hoy nos acompaña Elizabeth Yassimi, Language Learning Solutions de Mérida. Ella nos va a hacer el favor de hablarnos un poquito sobre el IELTS para aquellos que no conocen ese tipo de exámenes y están interesados. Nos va a hablar un poquito de la estructura, algunos tips de cómo prepararnos, etc. Antes de eso, quiero hablarles un poquito acerca de qué es Education USA. Para aquellos que no están familiarizados con Education USA, nosotros somos una red del Departamento de Estado de los Estados Unidos de centros de asesoría gratuitos. Education USA cuenta con una presencia a nivel global. Tenemos más de 400 centros alrededor del mundo en cerca de 180 países. Nuestro objetivo principal es promover la educación a nivel superior en los Estados Unidos. Solo aquí en México tenemos ya cerca de 25 centros de Education USA. Entonces les recomiendo a aquellos que nos están viendo en otras partes de la República que identifiquen su centro de Education USA más cercano si quieren más información sobre programas de estudio en los Estados Unidos, oportunidades de intercambio, etc. Y tenemos dos objetivos fundamentales. El primero es ofrecer información precisa, actualizada y completa sobre estas oportunidades de estudio en los Estados Unidos. Y necesitamos también detectar individuos que estén capacitados para este tipo de programas de estudio en los Estados Unidos y nos dedicamos a asesorar de una manera integral y gratuita a estos individuos sobre oportunidades en Estados Unidos. Muchos llegan con la pregunta en Education USA de ¿qué becas tienen? Nosotros no ofrecemos becas en sí, pero tenemos las herramientas necesarias y después de discutir un poco sobre los objetivos personales, el pasado académico de cada uno, podemos encauzarlos de acuerdo a sus intereses en cuanto a los tipos de programas que hay en Estados Unidos. Ahora le cedo los micrófonos a Liz. We're going to switch to English now. She's going to make a presentation about the IELTS. All yours, Liz.
Good morning, Rodrigo. Thank you for inviting me here today.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. So, I'm Liz Gassini. I'm the IELTS coordinator for LLS, or Language Learning Solutions, which is a language school here in Merida. And we are the only official test center for Cambridge exams and also for the IELTS exam. So I will just talk to you today a little bit about the format for the IELTS exam and cover some general things about it, and so you know what to expect, and then we might have time for some questions at the end. Sound good? Okay, great. Okay, so what is IELTS and why would you take it? The acronym IELTS stands for International English Language Testing System. Like many of these types of exams, it measures English proficiency in all 4 skills. So 4 areas that would be listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And it's for people who want to study or work where English is used as the main language. The grading is in a 9-band scale. It grades the level of proficiency from non-user, which is the lowest band, band 1, to expert, band 9. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about that in a second. There are 2 versions of IELTS. There's an academic version for people generally applying to study in an English-speaking country. For example, if you want to do your master's degree in Canada or the UK or something like that. There's also a general training version, which is really for those who are looking to emigrate to an English-speaking country. So that would be for you're not going to study, but perhaps you're going to work or live in that other country. So now let's look a little bit more in depth. Okay, so the general format of the IELTS exam is that it has 4 sections, 1 for each of the skills. It's about 3 hours long in total. In the listening section, you'll hear 4 separate recordings, and there are 40 questions total. The reading section, you have 3 texts of an academic nature, and there are 40 questions total. For the reading, you get 60 minutes, no extra time to transfer answers. Then there's a writing section where you have to write 2 separate tasks. You could call them essays for the academic IELTS. Task 1 is to describe a graph. It must be at least 150 words long. And task 2 is to give your opinion in an essay that is at least 250 words long. And you have 60 minutes to do both writing tasks. Then the speaking exam is a one-on-one interview with a trained examiner, and that's about 11 to 15 minutes long. So in total, it's about 3 hours. This is just kind of an overview to compare the two, the academic and the general version. As you can see, really they're the same. The reading and the writing are in different colors to show you that the content of the exams is slightly different, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the time is the same.
Wendy has a question, I think. She
Yes.
says, what's a graph?
Okay.
Graph.
A graph, I think maybe you might refer to it as graphic in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
It would be like maybe a financial chart showing financial numbers, or maybe it would be a diagram showing a process, maybe showing how something is made at a factory. It could be a map.
Yeah. Gráfico, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
Okay. Okay. I saw she answered. Okay, thanks. Yeah, graphic. Okay, so a common misconception is that there may be only multiple choice questions on the IELTS exam, and I think maybe that's because many people are used to getting exams with only multiple choice questions. But it's important to know that you will see a variety of question types in the listening and reading sections. So you might see, for example, a question where you have to match headings to paragraphs, gap fill, which means you have to fill in the missing word or words. You might have to classify things, matching sentence endings to the beginning of the sentence to the end of the sentence. You might have to fill in a diagram or fill in a table of information. You might also have to provide short answer questions. In other words, your answer would be more than one word. It could be a phrase. Okay, so here let's just talk briefly about the general training is slightly different in the reading and writing sections, as we saw in the other graph. For example, the reading, the content is different. So in general training, you will see 3 to 5 shorter texts related to social survival. For example, you might see advertisements, notices, job descriptions, employment contracts, general text, newspapers, travel brochures, things like that. And then writing the first task, instead of describing a graph, it's to write a semi-formal letter. So that's because the general training is more geared for someone who's going to live, not go to school in an English-speaking country. So the reading and writing, the content is more geared towards everyday life, not academic life. Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So, do you have many people here in Merida that applies for the general training, or is more geared towards the academic IELTS?
Typically, I see students who are going to study their master's in an English-speaking country, so I see more academic students. I would say maybe 20% are using the general training for immigration.
Okay. Interesting.
Okay, so next. So this is also a common misconception. Sometimes people hear things, and sometimes people think the general training IELTS is easier than the academic. It's a misconception. The reading and writing in general training are more everyday, and you could say less complex, but you need more questions correct in general training to get the same band or score, band is a score, as the academic. So here's an example. In academic, the reading section, you need 23 to 26 questions correct out of 40 to get a band 6.0. However, in general training, you need 30 to 31 correct out of 40 to get the same band, 6.0.
Wendy is asking if she can take the academic test in Merida.
Absolutely, we offer both at Language Learning Solutions. Okay, so that's just a general outline of the comparing the general training and academic. Okay, so we talked about the band or the score of the IELTS. Generally, the scores run from a maximum or highest score of 9.0, and then 0.0 is the lowest score. And then they break by 0.0 or 0.5 increments. For example, there's no such thing as a 6.3 on the IELTS or an 8.1 or something like that. The odd numbers are rounded up or down to the nearest 0.0 or 0.5. For each IELTS you take, you'll receive 5 scores, and I'll use the terminology bands or scores interchangeably. They mean the same thing. So you would get 5 scores, 1 score for each skill, listening, reading, writing, speaking, and an overall score, which is the average of the other 4. All right. Most foreign universities require between a 6.0 and a 6.5 overall. Most immigration authorities require, I've seen anywhere from 6.0 to 7.0 overall. Okay, so it's really important to consult with the institution to which you are applying and find out what IELTS they require of you, whether it's for taking your master's in the other country or for immigration, because the institution through which you're applying will tell you what IELTS score you need to get. It's up to them to say. Okay, so how does IELTS measure your English capability around the world or in a context that anyone can understand? There's something called the Common European Framework for Reference, or the CEFR. This is a measurement of ability that is understood around the world, and it's this middle A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. That's the measurement for the CEFR. And right here, we've shown you how the different IELTS bands map to the CEFR. So for example, if your institution tells you that you needed a B2 on your IELTS, that would map to a score of between roughly 5.5 to 6.5, right around here. Okay? If you needed a C1, then that's a higher band. You would need somewhere between an 8 to a 7 on your IELTS. And then here's just kind of a description of the different abilities that are ascribed to the different levels of the CEFR. So CEFR is understood around the world. If you go to any institution here, Germany, Russia, the UK, it doesn't matter. Everyone knows CEFR. Okay, this is interesting. This is a picture of what's called a test report form. And this would be, IELTS doesn't give you a certificate per se, but they give you a test report form, and that has your grade on it. So this you would receive around 2 or 3 weeks after you take the exam. And on top it would have, your information, your name, etc. And right in the middle, you can see it has test results. And you have, like I said, 5. So you have 1 for listening, 1 for reading, 1 for writing, 1 for speaking, and then the overall or the average. And then right next to it, the overall is translated to the CEFR level that we talked about. And this one, I believe it says B2. So all that information would be right on your test report form for you, so you can interpret it easily. Okay, so now let's talk about the individual sections. In the listening section, you will hear 4 different recordings. This is important to note. Unlike many other tests, recordings are played only once. So that's one of the things that makes IELTS, I believe, a more comprehensive test of your English ability. You'll write down the answers as you hear the recordings. And then after the last recording finishes, you have 10 minutes of silence. And in those 10 minutes, you're transferring your answers from your question booklet to your answer sheet. So you have 10 minutes at the end to put your answers in their final format. So I just wrote some questions and answers, questions that people generally tend to ask about listening. Do we listen through headphones? No, you're in a room with the other candidates and an audio CD is played. How many times will the audio be played? As we said, the audio is played just once. And here's another common question. Does IELTS have an expiration date? No, but your test report form has this note printed on it. And it's kind of a disclaimer. It says, it is recommended that the candidate's language ability as indicated in this test report form be reassessed after 2 years from the date of this test. So right on top of that test report form that we looked at, it has this disclaimer. What does this mean? This means that there is not an expiration date per se, but let's say you took IELTS now and then you, for some reason, didn't apply to university for another 3 years. That university would probably say, your IELTS is 3 years old and we want a more recent IELTS result. And they would tell you that you need to take it again so that they have a more recent measure of your English ability. In the reading section, it's rather straightforward. You'll have 3 texts and you have to answer questions pertaining to each one. And unlike listening, you do not have extra time to transfer your answers. You must complete the whole reading exam in 60 minutes. Sometimes people think that the subjects will be very, very strange for them, the subjects for the reading exam, but really they're just subjects that are of an academic nature, something you might see in a university textbook or something like that. They're taken from books, journals, magazines. Some of the most common topics are science, health, life science, the environment, cultural anthropology, behavioral psychology, and sociology, for example. Again, we're just talking about the academic IELTS at this point. What's the writing section like? You'll need to write 2 separate tasks, as we mentioned. Some common questions for the writing section. You should use and people think that they will be expected to be an expert on a variety of topics. No, that's not true. The essay topics are on a number of everyday subjects, but the questions are things that anyone who lives in a society would have an opinion on. So they're very similar really to the reading topics, but they're broad enough that anyone who goes to school or reads the newspaper or lives everyday life could certainly formulate an opinion on. So now let's just talk about the last section, that's the speaking section. So in speaking, you will speak to an examiner, it's just the 2 of you, and you'll talk about general everyday topics. You have a task where you have 1 minute to prepare notes on a topic chosen by the examiner, and then you need to speak about that topic for about 2 minutes. Then in the last question, the examiner will have a conversation with you. They'll ask you more questions about the same topic that you just spoke about. And there will be more general questions about that topic. And the examiner has to record the session, so they will probably have a small tape recorder with them. So in speaking, basically you are tested on your ability to speak, deliver a monologue, to speak on your own, and also to have a conversation. Listen and understand spoken English and respond appropriately. Wendy has a question, yeah? Wendy says, what kind of topics can be chosen? Very similar to the topics for writing, let's say, maybe even more everyday topics. It can be things like people in your family, trips that you've taken, celebrations you've been to. They're pretty much everyday topics. Parties that you've been to, things that you like to buy, things like that. Okay, so some people wonder, what if I have an accent? They worry about having an accent. Speaking with an accent is okay. The important thing is that it can't affect meaning. So, for example, these two words, ship and sheep, should sound different. Because if they don't, then your mispronunciation is affecting meaning, and that's something you want to stay away from. So, people ask, how do I prepare for IELTS? Really, it's the same thing 3 times, practice, practice, practice. You know, learning English is like learning to play the piano. You know, you would need to practice playing the piano every single day for at least an hour, right, before you could be able to play a song comfortably. English is the same way. You need to practice it every day. That's your goal. And I know everyone's busy. Everyone's doing lots of things, but try to work English into your everyday life as much as you can. It's difficult here because there are not that many ways to get in touch with English. You kind of have to look for them. But certainly with the internet, you know, we have such easy internet access, and everyone has a little mini computer on their phone, right? Everyone carries a computer with them every day. It can be easy to reach out and to look for different resources in English and to start practicing. So I think that the important thing is to do it regularly and to do it a lot. So to practice a lot and become comfortable with these things, because it takes time, and be patient. Okay, so here's a short comparison between the IELTS exam and the TOEFL exam. For example, Wendy has a question. You give the practice material. I'll get to that in a second. I'm going to talk about that. So I'll answer towards the end. The IELTS, for example, has no expiration date. The TOEFL does expire after 2 years. The IELTS is about 3 hours long. TOEFL is a little bit longer. It's 4 hours. The scoring for the IELTS, like we said, it's in the bands 0 to 9. And the TOEFL is a score from 0 to 120. In the IELTS, your speaking is in person with an examiner. In TOEFL, you speak it into a tape recorder. In IELTS, there are many different question types, like we saw. And in TOEFL, it's mostly multiple choice. In the IELTS exam, the writing portion, it's only writing. But in TOEFL, you have a reading task and a listening task as part of the writing task. So in TOEFL writing, they're combining actually 3 skills. And in IELTS writing, it's only the writing skill. So those are some main differences between IELTS and TOEFL, in case you were wondering. Okay, so Language Learning Solutions, as I mentioned, is a language school located here in Merida. We're in the Prado Norte neighborhood, which is kind of near Plaza Fiesta for those who are local in Merida. LLS has been around for quite some time. We're the only authorized Cambridge English Assessment Center in this area, and we offer the full suite of Cambridge exams as well as the IELTS exam. We also offer test preparation courses for all the Cambridge exams and the IELTS exam. In fact, I give the IELTS exam preparation course. And in the course, we do provide practice material. We do mock exams, and we offer a lot of strategies and tips, which is really very important for taking an exam such as IELTS, because it's a measurement of many things, not just your English ability. It's a difficult exam, and with hints and strategies, and also knowing what to expect on the exam, I think it'll make it a lot easier for people. For people who haven't taken a prep course for the IELTS exam and for some of the other exams, when they do take the exam, it's a big surprise, and if they're not prepared, they may not do as well as they could have. So this is just reiterating that at LLS, we are the authorized Cambridge Exam Center. These are some of the Cambridge exams that we offer. This is really the full suite right here. Some people may be familiar. This is the CHI exam. This is first certificate. The CHI is the Cambridge Advanced exam. Here's the IELTS exam. Some people may be familiar with TKT. That's for teachers, basically for English teachers. So all of these exams are aimed towards different people, and they're taken for different reasons. Okay? But exams, we do offer all of them. Coming to the end, I think in the end it's going to have, here we go. Yeah, contact information or language in school. Our director is Catchpole. Here's the phone number. You can email us here. And here's the address in Prado Norte. And here are the business hours, 9 to 11. Wendy says, how many students have taken the IELTS at your center for now? This year, I don't know that number offhand, but I know it's several hundred. I can find out, Wendy, if you want, then I can let Rodrigo know. So you can contact Brett at this email. You can contact me. And we're also on Facebook. And on Facebook, you would just find us by searching Language Learning Solutions or LLS. Either way, you can find us. You can send us a message on Facebook. That would be nice. Yeah, Wendy, I can get back to you with those exact numbers if you'd like. Okay. So, would you like to talk about this?
Thanks so much, Liz, for this presentation. I think you provided with really valuable information for those who are not familiar with IELTS. For those who had questions, I received quite some emails asking me about this exam, so I think this is going to be useful for them to clarify some of those questions. Y pues muchas gracias a los que nos visitaron. Lo último que quiero decirles es que les recomiendo estar en contacto con las oficinas de Education USA más cercanas. Ahí les podemos proporcionar información sobre este tipo de centros, sobre oportunidades de universidades, sobre oportunidades de becas, y los asesoramos de manera integral, como dije al principio, en la búsqueda de programas de estudio en los Estados Unidos. Pueden checar las redes sociales. La página oficial es educationusa.state.gov, y en Facebook la red nacional es Education USA MEX, y el centro de aquí de Mérida es Education USA Yucatán, que está a cargo de la península, los estados de Yucatán, Campeche y Quintana Roo. Y los correos electrónicos también están allá. El centro México, la red global es mexico@educationusa.info, y mi correo es en el centro Mérida, rodrigo.delosantos@comexus.org.mx. Aquellos que llegaron tarde, este video va a ser subido al canal de YouTube y les voy a mandar el enlace una vez que yo esté allá arriba en la página de Facebook de Education USA. I think Wendy has a question about the costs.
The IELTS exam. The last price was about 3,600 pesos, a little over that, I believe, but around 3,600 pesos. The cost varies a little bit depending on the part of the country where you take it. I'm not sure why that is. It must be some part of their Cambridge rules. But here it's about 3,600.
Okay, 3,600 pesos, Wendy. De todas maneras, I have a question actually. Where can students check about the dates, testing dates here in Yucatan?
Okay. Let's see. I can get the exact link for you. Why don't I do that?
Perfect. Do you post those?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Did you say something, Rodrigo? No, I don't believe so, but I can definitely get it for you. Rodrigo, I can't hear you if, I don't know if you asked me something, sorry. Okay, my mic went out, so I can't hear you. No, I don't think so. No, if anybody has further questions, they can contact us and we can answer any question they have. If they're looking to take a preparation course, we offer them all during the year. So it's a very full service center, and I think they can find the answer that they're looking for. Thanks.